By the way, let's go ahead and bring in my main man, Jeff Ketchum, for Overreaction Monday. JK Catch, how's my main man doing? How's my dog?
GK Catch.
Yeah, GK. GK Catch.
I'm good, man. Look, Liverpool is down to 10 men yesterday. They played 70 minutes with 10 men, and they scored 2 goals in the last 10 minutes to beat Newcastle. Man, I'm flying high coming in on a Monday. It is amazing how much better life is when your favorite teams win.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, it's game week, and Longhorn fans can get that dopamine hit starting Saturday against Rice. I hope everybody feels as good next Monday as I feel on this Monday.
You know what? It's been a while since you felt good on a Monday, Catch. It's been a hot minute because usually it's been like me, trying to entertain, like trying to be a comedian in front of like teenagers, right? Where the teenagers just looking at you like, or you ever try to make a joke to your kids and they just feel like you're not funny. So
look, to be fair, last weekend I had an Orange Bloods Live worker quit 10 minutes before he started somewhere else.
Well, there is that.
You were getting me like right at the wrong time because Liverpool won last weekend, but sometimes work is just stressful and demanding, and
yeah.
But when your teams win, work, schmirk. It doesn't matter that much. I'm in a good mood.
Okay, good. So real quick before we get into the topic at hand, I started off the show talking about this and about the channel. This morning, we had the debut of Horns Up. We clearly have the old-fashioned sports show that's going on right now, House Divided, with you and Chad Hastings from noon until 3. We've got Alex coming in at 3:30 with Football with Friends. And then tonight, the debut of OB Outsiders. I told the audience, cat's out the bag as far as what we're trying to do with this channel. I think everyone can kind of figure it out by now. But just how excited are you about what we've been able to this week as far as OB Live is concerned?
I'm pumped. Not only that, I have a conversation at 4:00 after my show today with another potential show partner / contributor that might be doing shows on Monday. I've got former Texas All-Americans knocking on the door, wanting to do shows with us during the season. On Saturday, you and I will do the post-game shows.
Yes.
As we've done now. This will be our 9th consecutive season. We did Facebook Live. We've done the gamut of places and means of doing shows. We'll be back for season number 9 and started on Saturday. For the first time ever in this market, and believe me, we'll be copied in like 5 minutes. We're going to have a game watch-along show. Chad Hastings and myself, every game this season for Texas, and even some A&M games. The plan next week is to do the A&M Miami game as a watch-along, and then follow that up with Texas and Alabama, and then the Texas post-game show from Tuscaloosa. It'll be like 10 hours of broadcasting. I'm absolutely pumped up about it. It's going to be a ton of fun. So, yeah, man, it is exciting days, exciting times here on Orange Bloods Live.
There will be a question about bathroom breaks at some point, Catch, as to like when does that occur on this watch-along thing? That's a very long time, man.
Yeah, I mean, you take breaks when the games take breaks. We'll pop in that little Joseph Osai video that just debuted on the channel. By the way, I've already done like 20 of these things, and I'm doing more. Yeah. Guys, I appreciate the fact that you watch us all day long, and so that the recruiting flashbacks get old. But what are the expectations on that? That we have 5 new ones every day?
You're gonna run out of Longhorns. You'd be like, in 1944.
Well, and the video is one of the tricky things. So I was able to get that video. You mentioned it earlier here on the Old Fashioned. I got probably 8 hours worth of video transferred over from VHS to digital. So in just this week, we'll be adding a Chris Sims video. I'm working on a Derek Johnson video, a Cedric Benson video. Like the videos will continue and they will be big timers. And it'll include high school footage of these guys that people haven't seen in over 20 years. So when we ran that Corey Redding video like less than an hour ago, that included video that was like 24 years old and high school footage that hadn't been seen in that long. So I hope you guys appreciate what we're doing with those videos. It's not like you can search in the YouTube window or Google it and find what we're producing on the videos. And I think they're fun.
Yeah. I can't wait for the videos. Like he came back from the war and then he decided he was going to play for the Longhorns and then he re-enlisted. And
that'll be the Tom Landry recruiting video.
Catch, today I've told everyone that today is prediction day. I've told everybody that they got to be like us, okay? Like, because we have to every year. We have to put our predictions out there for the public to see, for the public to consume, and then everybody gets a chance when the season's done to say, you guys got it right, or you guys were idiots, right? And so I've told everyone to get into the Specs chat and make sure they put their predictions in, screenshot it, so we can have the conversation after the screen. Because I told them I don't want to entertain anything after the season. If this team is like 12-0, you better say that today. Like if this team goes 8-4, you better say it. If it's 9-2, 10-2, whatever, say that today. Like you better say that today. So this is it. Catch. I've already said my prediction, which is 10-2. I'm on the record for that. You talked about it prior. Sunday was the deadline for you to finally put in your last prediction. I want you to tell everybody what that prediction is, and let's get into the why.
I'm in such a good mood. I feel like you're asking me to reveal the truth about Santa Claus to all these people who were saying things like 11-1, 12-0, playoff. Desmond Howard over the weekend predicting the Longhorns in the playoff. I think Kurt Bowles of the Austin American Statesman doing the exact same thing.
Uh-oh.
I've got the Longhorns at 9-3 in the Big 12 championship game. I haven't really given a prediction on that because it's hard to know exactly what that looks like, who they'll be playing. I don't have a good feel for, I think, the rest of the Big 12. But I've got them 9-3 in the Big 12 championship game. That could mean that they also win the Big 12 championship. If I guess I could say they're going to win the Big 12 championship and be 10-3. But I've just been focusing on the 12-game schedule. It's hard to be absolute about something that is only imaginary at this point with regards to that game that we either do or do not know that, they're going to play in.
So how did you talk yourself into that? Because I went through the whole 12
pretty easily, actually.
Okay.
Look, guys, this is Anwar asking me a question. So don't get upset at me. Don't act like I'm trying to pee in your Cheerios on the very opening Monday of the season. But the last time we saw this team play a game that counted, they were losing 27-10 with about 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter against Washington. You can give me, whatever, drop passes, and Quinn could have done this. And there. It was 27-10 in the fourth quarter. And the game before that, Steve Sarkisian had to take the ball out of his quarterback's hands with about 15 minutes to go in the game. And that's not my subjective opinion. He literally talked to the media about this a couple of weeks ago about the Baylor game and how they didn't trust Quinn and they just ran the ball because they didn't quite believe in their quarterback. You go 2 games before that, the offense scored 3 points at home against TCU. And you go 2 weeks before that, they were leading 31-17 in Stillwater in the second half and blew that game. This is not a team coming off of a season that suggests that they're ready to be a playoff level team. This is a team that every other week did something that you just assume not happened. Lost the bowl game, lost to TCU, lost in Lubbock and Stillwater. It's a team with a coach that I don't quite trust yet. It's a team with a quarterback that I have no reason to trust other than off-season hyperbole that may be exactly on the money, but they haven't played any games. and he's 2 games removed from his coach not trusting him last season and taking the ball out of his hand. So I just think you add that. I just saw a deal on, it's funny, I was watching ESPN's Game Day this weekend. They said that the Big 12 was the deepest conference in the country.
Wow.
Today, I just retweeted a thing where it says that of all the top 25 teams, Texas has the 3rd toughest schedule of all the teams in the top 25. I just think that this is a team that's still learning how to be good. It's learning how to be consistently good. It's still learning how to be consistently good on the road. It's still learning how to beat really good teams. It's still got a quarterback that's growing up a little bit and may have some aches and pains on what I think is actually going to be a really good season for Quinn Ewers. And it has a coach that has to prove that inside all of these things, he can have the best season of his entire career as a head coach. It's asking a lot. I think this team has a chance to win the Big 12 championship. I think they're going to be in the Big 12, championship. But it's a tough schedule. It's got some tricky road games. It will be playing in a conference that doesn't want them to win. You can't trust Big 12 officials. You haven't been able to trust them since Charlie Strong was here. They've been getting screwed by Big 12 officials in games going back to 2014, 2015. You really got to go back to the days of Mac Brown when I think Texas were treated fairly by Big 12 officials. Every year, there are multiple games where it's like, hey, Texas had 14 penalties today. The other team had 1. How'd that happen? So I think it adds up to a lot. I think Texas will probably lose at Alabama, although I think, A, they can win that game, and B, I think it'll be a really good game. And then you've got the rest of the schedule, and I think there's some tricky games. I think any game this team goes on the road in the Big 12 this year is a tricky game. So I come up with 9-3. I know it's not rainbows and Christmas presents under the tree from Santa, but it is improvement. And it may very well end with a Big 12 championship and playing in a major bowl game. I just don't think they're elite of the elite yet. I think they may be a year away.
Yeah, well, the thing about 9-3 is, it's like, when you go back from any season, and teams will always talk about, we were only a couple of plays away from winning certain games. Then you always go in reverse, which you're always a couple of plays away from losing certain games. But in 9-3, and it's not pissing anyone's Cheerios, because that also means it's a couple of plays away from being 10-2, right? So that 9-3 puts you into that soft spot where 10-2 could potentially happen. 8-4 is disastrous, right? So, and 9-3 is still improvement, right? At the end of the day, it would still go from 5 to 8 to 9. So there's still upward mobility that's occurring. It wouldn't be that stardom that I think Texas fans are hoping for, but it still would be progress. Now, let me tell you why I go 10-2. So the reason why I go 10-2 probably is I probably have a little bit more, blind faith to a certain degree in Quinn than you do at this moment. Like I feel like that. And look, I stood on the table for him last year, and you asked me, did I think you have a QBR below 150? Right, if 150 was the number, was that the number we put out last year?
I don't remember, but he went under it with a bunch.
Yeah, but nonetheless, I said, nope, you're crazy, and ended up being wrong. So there's still coming back to a little bit of blind faith as relates to Quinn. So I've drank the Kool-Aid a little bit, catch on the thought process and belief that he has gotten better. This to me is if we're going to believe Sark to be the QB whisperer, as he has that name and moniker, and if he's telling us this guy's good, and I got the faith in him and I believe in him, then I want to say, all right, you're good. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to take your word on it, because so far, when it comes to players, you haven't necessarily been wrong about like the players that you believe in and the players that you feel like you've developed. Now he always has optimism about the season, catch. Like he's always, even after losses last season, he still talked about competing for championships. So I get that. So when he talks about that, I'm like, but when it comes about player development, I feel good. I feel good about the talent level, to feel good about the two deep. We'll get the depth chart at some point today, Catch. There's very few positions on this team that I feel like if someone has to miss the flu, that this team is screwed at any stretch of the imagination. So I feel good about that. I talked about before you came on, the addition of Paul Chris as a guy that Sark can lean on as relates to game planning. I feel like that could be an advantage to him, especially as a play call when people start asking about second half adjustments and things to that effect. And then I'm just going to take that whole abstract thing, Catch, which what I'm about to say is the non-tangible of anything that I've just said. But I'm going to go non-tangible, which is, look, we've seen other teams kind of rise from the dust, and I have reasons to believe that what TCU did is not sustainable. I don't believe TCU is going to be a team that gets back to where they were. I don't know if in our lifetime, but I do believe that Texas is being built from the ground up, where I think it is sustainable. So that's why I'm going to give them a little bit. That's why I go 10-2. I can't go 12-0 for obvious reasons. Can't go 11-1. That's a little bridge too far for me. 10-2 for me is a sweet spot. I think winning against Alabama is very feasible, even though I'm going to predict a loss there to be safe. And then we'll see what happens in the Big 12. But that to me is my 10-2 thoughts. Like, and by the way, this is like the you and I splitting of hairs things, that the thing that you always do when you split the hairs of good. It's not a huge difference between 9-3 and 10-2.
I'm about to hit you with a rebuttal, but what you just said is exactly right. The difference is a coin flip, right? It is one of these 50-50 games going one way versus the other. That's a difference in our records. We both have them in the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah.
And look, I think it's more likely than not that they win a Big 12 championship game than they lose it, because I think they should be. This is a team that should get better as the season goes along. It should. That didn't happen a year ago. I mean, you could almost make the case that their best performance was either the Oklahoma game in October or the Alabama game in September. But what I would say, Anwar, is this. Let's go back to the Washington game. Let's forget everything that's happened in this offseason. And let's go back to the last time this team actually played a football game where the outcome ended up on their record. When they lost to Washington late in December of last year, I went back and watched a little bit of the postgame show. Do you recall on that day whether or not you felt like this Texas football team was done learning the lessons and taking the steps that it needed to be a championship contender and some truly worthy of being in the top 10 in the country? Do you remember on that day how you felt watching that team, and whether or not you thought to yourself in a loss to Washington where they were losing 27-10 late, 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, whether or not you thought this team was done with its evolution?
From what I remember, the emotions of that game, I remember the emotions. I don't remember specifically what I said. I remember it was right around the time of my birthday, and I had spent about a week in San Antonio. And I just remember, if I got to spend my birthday week like doing something, I remember being a little bit frustrated with that thing. So I know how I am, especially after frustrating losses, and I get really ticked off. So I'm sure my emotions at that time was a guy that was like, this is some BS.
Well, I just think more than anything, the evolution wasn't done that night. When we get to week one, nothing that happened in that last game in December had us, and we swore to ourselves, there was only so far we would go in the offseason with regards to predictions for the team based on what we had seen in the season. And I just feel like this team still has some growing up to do, that it still has to learn how to win, not just big games, but big games on the road. And then what do you do the week after a big game? This is not easy. This will be a schedule where every team on it will have the Texas game scheduled. You're going to get, there's a lot of reasons why. I mean, this season in the Big 12, and it will be this way for Oklahoma too. Everybody wants to leave a black eye on the Longhorns and the Sooners in their final game. And I do think the officials at some point will. There's just a lot of things that all add up. I think there will be at least a couple of games this season where Quinn Ewers has a bit of a stinker. Doesn't mean he's going to have a bad season. I'm actually predicting him to have a really good season. I'm predicting his quarterback efficiency rating to go up 23 points. I'm expecting him to throw just under 4,000 yards in 12 games. I think he throws more than 30 touchdowns in 12 games. And you look at those numbers and you think, well, God, if he's going to do that, how the hell are they ever going to lose game? Because there will be a couple of games mixed in where he won't play well. And what I don't know about this Texas team yet, because we sure as shit didn't see it against TCU at home with 100,000 people ready to go ape crazy, ape shit crazy. And they couldn't score points. They scored 3 that night. The defense scored the other 7. Well, technically 6 into the special teams with the extra point. But I don't know that this team knows how to win yet without Quinn Ewers playing really, really well. And I do think there will be at least a couple of times this season where he struggles. He's still in his evolution of a quarterback. He's not done learning. He's not done evolving. He's not done with an occasional poor performance or two just because our timeline demands that it be so. So I actually think next year, with all of the departures to the NFL that we think that this team is going to take on, I actually think this is the year they learn some of these things. And my expectations are, even with a roster that will lose a lot at the top next year, I think and I hate to be the guy that says next year, but that offensive line I don't think the offensive line is a team strength. In fact, I think the biggest weakness on the entire team is the interior of the offensive line. There's a reason why Alfred Collins has had his name mentioned and Vernon Broughton has had their names mentioned almost every single time Steve Sarkisian opens his mouth. And there's a reason why he's never said, who's having a badass camp? DJ Campbell, Jake Majors, Hayden Connor. There's a reason why these things exist. But I think you look ahead to next year and you get Kelvin Banks as a junior. You got all that 2022 recruiting class on the offensive line. They're now third-year players. I don't think the wide receiver position will skip a beat. In fact, they've got a bunch of young guys that I love. I think they'll go into the portal and get some guys. Anthony Hill will be a second-year guy. You're returning a lot on defense. I wrote about it in my 10 Thoughts on the Weekend. You could see a world next year where your secondary is Malik Muhammad, Terrence Brooks, Gavin Holmes at corner. You've got Derek Williams and, pick a safety. There will be a number of guys. You got Jelani McDonald, who could be your starting nickel next year, and he looks great after just 15 practices with this team in August. I really think this talent next year will go through the crucibles in 2023. They may even win the Big 12 championship, but they'll have some hard times too. And along the way, these young guys will learn how to win. They'll learn how to do these things that they haven't yet exhibited on the field in actual games. And I think Arch Manning may actually turn out to be better than Quinn Ewers when it's all said and done.
Okay. Okay. Too much. You can't. All right. That I was ready to address that. Then it was the second part of it. And then I got super chats. And so my mind's blown and we only got 30 minutes. So let's do the super chats first and pay the bills. Thank you guys again for hitting up the Specs chat line. We absolutely appreciate all the comments that are in there. Make sure you get there's 300 strong. So listen, I need you guys to hit that like button, hit subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. And please, in the chat, put down your season predictions. I want you to screenshot it. We're going to make sure you have you on the record. So when it's December and the season's over, don't come to me and say, hey, man, I predicted 12-0 when you never said anything today. So do it today. Jay Lee back here again. He goes, I was busy and did bad math. 9-4 with a Big 12 championship.
That would be bad.
Okay, yeah. Jay Lee, that's a bad scenario right there, Jay Lee. So 9-4 is okay, but then losing in the Big 12 champ. Because here's the thing, Jay Lee, if you lose in the Big 12 championship game, then you put the bowl game as a must-win. Because you lose the bowl game. Now you're talking about like 9-5. Here's the thing, like Jay, like at that point, 9-4, a loss. guys are like, you know what? Time to go to the NFL. Like that, you're gonna have guys making their career decisions, and you ain't gonna like that. So Jay Lee, I hear you. You don't want that. What was another one, Aaron? We had another one that came in. Paul. He predicted that Texas goes 12-0 if they beat Bama. Yes, he's with El Presidente. He's standing on the roof.
I hope he's right. I hope he's right.
12-0 would be great for business. But Paul,
I want Paul Anwar to go back and watch the Washington postgame show.
Now, to be fair,
no actual football games have been played since the Washington Bowl game.
And to be fair, Xavier Worthy was playing with some sort of broken hand that may have explained the 3 drops that he had at that point. So there is that. I'm just, if we add in the Washington game, right? So, and we still to this day aren't quite sure how healthy Quinn is, but he's healthy enough to play. We're still today, that. So just to be fair, what else do we have? Texas boy, been very active catch in the chat, in the super chat today, by the way.
Boy is awesome.
Yeah, so he wants to know, to your point, when you start bringing up Washington from last season, he goes, was Washington not did Washington not have were they not a top 10 team with a top offense?
I don't know what Washington is. I think that they were not one of the 2 best teams in the Pac-12 last year. I think they were the 3rd best team in the Pac-12. They return a lot. They're getting a lot of credit for beating Texas in the bowl game. Because I think here's what's happened, Anwar. People are wanting to put Texas in the top 10 or close to the top 10. But you can't put Texas in the top 10 and not have Washington. If you look at every poll, they've got Washington like 1 spot in front of Texas.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, oh, I can't put Texas in there if I don't put Washington in there because Washington kicked their butt. Washington will probably be one of the top 3 teams in the Pac-12 this year, but I don't know if they're one of the 2 best teams. I think they're a lot of fun. I'll watch a lot of Washington football. I know they start the year at the back end of the top 10, maybe 10th, depending on the poll you're looking at. I don't know if they're that good. I know that they beat Texas, and everybody's high on Texas, and that's why everybody has Washington that high. Wouldn't shock me if they go 9-3.
Okay, good. Aaron, are we done with the super chats at this moment? Okay, good. So, Catch, we are all caught up on the super chats. Let me ask you this. Let's do some more predictions. All right, is that cool?
Yeah.
Let me
show, buddy.
Hey, okay, no, it's good. Well, I got about another 25 minutes left. This thing goes so fast. So our Mondays are just going to be like crazy rapid fire, unfortunately.
Dude, we're 90 minutes away from the first Monday press conference of the year. I've never been so excited to hear Steve Sarkisian speak in my entire life.
Do you think Sark is on time or not?
Oh, no. It'll be if we set the over and under at 11:15, what do you think? Ooh. There were a lot of weeks last year where it was like 11:25.
Yeah. First week, game week. Yeah, I'm gonna take the over. I'm gonna take there's too many things that are happening. Too many things happening at one time. 11 o'clock will not happen. I will take the over on Sark. By the way,
I'm gonna take the under.
Really?
Barely. I think he'll be as close to starting at 11 o'clock this week than next week and the week after. I mean, all bets are off. But for the very first one, I'll say like 11:07.
11:07. See, I don't know. There are. I won't say who, but there are reporters like before every Sark press conference who set the line on when Sark's going to show up. And they do that for every press conference. So you and I are just doing this for fun. But literally beforehand, someone will say, all right, here's the line. And then always see if it goes under or over. Usually it's the over, though. He probably wouldn't enjoy that.
Hey, if you get caught in traffic, it'll be the day that they're on time.
It's like one time when we had a media availability in training camp, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then instead of it going at 11, it's like, we're going to start at 10:30. I'm like, what? When does this ever happen?
That will not happen today.
No, it won't happen. Okay, So let's go to some other categories, all right? Because we can probably do a whole show on 10-2 versus 9-3, but I want to get to your other thoughts. Give me your thoughts on an offensive MVP for the season. If you had to think of that person, who in December are we saying that was the offensive MVP?
I think Xavier Worthy's going to bounce back, and I think he'll be a Biletnikoff finalist.
Ooh, okay. He's got to have a good quarterback for that to happen, right?
Again, I think Quinn Ewers is going to throw for about 3,900 yards and 34 touchdowns.
Okay, all right. So you got Worthy as your offensive MVP. For me, I'm not going to put Quinn in as my offense. I'm going to ride it till the wheels fall off.
I can appreciate that.
I'm gonna for anybody who ever thought, see, this is, you know what catches? This is how people thought I spoke about Tyrone Swoops back in the day. Like how I speak about Quinn.
No, Casey Thompson.
Well, yeah,
I love Casey Thompson.
I did stand on the damn table for Casey Thompson. And I was good with Casey Catch up until he was like, we got in Nebraska, we got better NIL deals than Texas does. And I was like, oh, now you're doing the thing. Now you're just trying to agitate people and poke the bear. I'm like, don't do that, because now you're gonna have people rooting against you. And he did it. And I was like, oh, this is not going to end well for Casey. And now Casey at FAU, like year 6, I did stand on the table for Casey. And it's probably about the equivalent for Quinn, I would say. But I'm going to stay with Quinn because, and James knows I love me some Charles Wright too. Like Charles Wright's my dude as well. And they have been giving me such a hard time in the chats about Charles Wright ever since I asked you if there was an opportunity for him to play if someone got the flu. And it has been a running joke within it, and now our Specs chat line. But I'm gonna get a Charles Wright jersey one day. Someone from the Charles Wright family is gonna send me a jersey. I'm gonna wear it on my show. But I'm gonna stay with Quinn. I think that if he does what he's going to do, I think the quarterback always gets the attention. He always gets the love, and I think that if he can make that transition. And he ends up being that feel-good story that everyone loves. Used to be at Ohio State. Look at him now. And then it's like, look at Joe Burrow. He was at Ohio State. Look how great he's doing. Look at Quinn Ewers. Like, I think there's enough narratives for that to happen. So he's my offensive MVP. I'm going to put Texas Boy back up for the chat because he's got another one. I told you he's very active today. He must have got paid on Friday. Texas Boy got paid like last week of the month. And Texas Boy, like, I got some money to burn. So we appreciate you, Texas Boy. Nonetheless, catch, buy or sell. No one will rub Sark. Goodness gracious.
Buy.
No one will rub Sark's nips while waiting to run out of the tunnel at all this season.
Hey, we talked about this when it happened, and I'm going to say it again. It don't matter how big or small a man is. Men don't like having their man boobs touched. No matter how big or small they are. Nobody wants another man like copping a feel on the boob, man. They just don't. And like what we learned about Sark is he'll get in that ass if you touch his man boobs. Like, don't do that out in public. Or you got to remember, he used to be a D1 athlete. People think of him as like an older coach now. He probably has some squabs. Because back in the day, he was probably the best athlete where he was from. You don't lose that muscle memory. He looked like he wanted to kick that dude's ass. Ain't nobody, no official in the Big 12 is doing that this year. They're going to keep their hands to themselves.
All right. So I asked you who your offensive MVP was. Who's your defensive MVP, Catch?
I mean, I think the obvious choice, sometimes don't get too cute with these. Jalen Ford is your returning All-American. He's the real only proven playmaker on this defense. When you think about what he had 4 interceptions last season, it seemed like every game he made the big defensive play. I worry that he will regress slightly to the mean. What does that mean, right? Well, it means maybe he doesn't have 4 interceptions this year. Maybe he has 2. Maybe the big stats go down slightly, although I certainly leave it in the realm of possibilities that they could go up. He's going to make a ton of tackles. He is their best player on defense.
Yeah, I went with Jalen Ford in my prediction column as well. To your point, sometimes you don't have to overthink it, and sometimes you don't have to go Byron Murphy, Tavondre Sweat. Like sometimes you just take the obvious choice. And to me, everything that he accomplished last year, you just continue to build on. I think he's kind of, the rock to be the most solid player on defense. I'm 100% with you. It's going to be maybe hard to have as many tackles as he did last year. Yeah. But nonetheless, he's probably still going to be in that range.
I think the tackles will be there. I wonder and worry slightly about the big plays, not because I don't think he's capable. He just had them in such abundance last year. I mean, it's not easy for a starting linebacker to get 4 interceptions in a season. And it all really came together for him. He should have won some awards last year. He probably should have been a first-team level All-American instead of second or third team. He really was exceptional. And there were few linebackers in the country that accumulated the big play, difference-making plays that he did.
All right, let me ask you 2 more questions and we'll wrap it up, right? This was the harder one, I think. I think what I'm going to ask you is the hardest of the MVPs. Who will be the freshman MVP prediction-wise when the season is done?
Anthony Hill.
Anthony Hill.
Because, I think when this season's over, there was a part of me that almost said Anthony Hill over Jalen Ford.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't because I have a working brain sometimes. But I think they're going to use Anthony Hill in a way that's going to make him a bit of a lightning rod on this team. I think he has a chance to be a big play, third down specialist type of guy. They don't have anybody else on this defense that they move around and put into places to create mismatches and to get defense on their heels a little bit. There's nobody else on the entire team that I think sources that I've talked to talk about the same way they talk about Anthony Hill. So I think by the end of the year, he could be the defense's best player.
Wait, now this is a fascinating thing for me because you have bought heavy in your CJ Baxter stock.
I think he'll be really good.
Okay, but you thought, hold. You had a belief that at some point CJ is probably going to start this season, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if he starts this season, doesn't he become like the freshman MVP when it's all said and done? If he takes over for a senior and has the season that you believe, I just want to know, like,
I don't think CJ Baxter is going to have 1,000 yards.
Okay.
And I think Anthony Hill may finish the season as the best player on an entire side of the field. This season won't end with me thinking Gary Baxter is one of the top 5 players on offense.
Okay. And Malik Muhammad doesn't get into, is Malik at least in your top 3?
Probably. They're one wide receiver away from Jonte Cook potentially having his name in this discussion. I think if there's anything, Xavier Worthy, one of the things that I think has to prove to NFL scouts is that he can stay healthy. I think last year there were bumps and bruises, obviously the broken hand. He's such a slight guy. They list him at 172, but that's got to be with rocks in his pocket. So, if Xavier Worthy for some reason misses a game or 2 or 3, I think the door could open up for Jonte Cook and he could be in that position. But yeah, CJ Baxter is probably the right guy on offense. And I don't have any problem with anybody that thinks CJ Baxter will be the guy. I'm probably on a little bit of a limb with being so all in on Anthony Hill. But I remember Derek Johnson's freshman season at Texas back in 2001. They never started him. But they'd bring him on the field like the second or third play of the game. And it was just clear that by the end of the season, Texas had a special player and a guy that was their best player on defense, whether or not he started or not. And I kind of view Anthony Hill the same way. It will not surprise me if at the end of the season, Anthony Hill leads this team in sacks or is at least in the neighborhood of Barron Sorrell. Let's say 7 or 8, something like that. I think Anthony Hill has a chance to be freshman Big 12 newcomer of the year. And I think he'll be on a lot of national lists as well.
Okay, last question, Catch, and then I'm going to run down to UT, and they'll be there front and center for Steve Sarkisian's press conference at 11 o'clock or 11:20, depending. Scheduled for 11. We'll see what happens when it's all said and done. You've got Texas at 9-3, so clearly you have them as the number 2 team in the championship game. Who's the other team that you believe is going to be in the Big 12 championship game?
Well, and I don't know that 7-2 puts Texas as the number 2 team. I look, and I said this a year ago, and give props to TCU for proving me wrong. And I'll say the same thing should anybody do it this year. There's a lot of parity in the Big 12. You know, the top 4 teams in the league are all ranked between 11 and 20 for the most part. I mean, TCU were probably. I guess I'll go with TCU here. TCU has we've got this idea in our heads that everybody graduated from TCU and that all their best players are gone and that they'll somehow be a weak team. It's a team of 14 seniors on the Senior Bowl watch list. 3 of them are offensive linemen. 4 of them are in the secondary. They've added some impact transfers. You know, with like Texas, it'll come down to quarterback play. And if they don't get plus quarterback play, then they could be an 8-4 type of team, 7-5 if they really don't get good quarterback play. But if they do get good quarterback play, I think that's a team I think it'll be Texas versus TCU in the Big 12 championship game. It would not shock me if there are if both of those teams are 7-2 in conference play at the end of the year. It won't surprise me. And it wouldn't really even surprise me if there are 3 teams tied for first place at 7-2 at the end of the year. I don't think there's going to be an undefeated team. I'm coolish on the idea that somebody runs the Big 12 schedule and only loses once. So it could be a year where 7-2 and 6-3 are kind of jumbled at the top of the pack with as many teams as in the conference this year. I think you could have 4 or 5 teams that are between 7-2 and 6-3, which will make the last couple of games of the Big 12 schedule, that Texas Tech game that we're talking a lot about, that game will have a lot on the line. And not necessarily because of Texas Tech. They could be one of those teams on the line. But because I think the standings will be so jumbled together, that everybody's game will be big at the end. Everybody will need to win that last game to make sure they don't get left out.
Yeah, I'm going. Mine is K-State, and that's the one I've decided to go with. You know, when had the guy on, recently and talked about K-State and reminded me that, you know what, they're Will Howard is still there, and he was very effective in his role. They lost some, but they do replace some deep on the offensive line. They feel good about what they have coming back on the defensive portion. And K-State is just one of those teams that, that's kind of we don't talk about a lot, and they get ranked and they get respect, but it's just one of those Catch, just from whatever reasons, usually sneaky good year in and year out. And I know Texas had some success against them last year, but they are the defending Big 12 champions, and so at that point, I've got to give them a little bit of their props. So I've got Texas in there, and I got Texas and K-State, and we'll see what happens from there. But that's kind of my prediction as far as that's concerned. Catch, the last thing I want to say is that Overreaction Monday brought to us by Richard and the Rogue Shop, one of our favorites. Didn't mention them in the beginning, but definitely need to mention them in the course for the Overreaction Monday. So yeah, go ahead and Aaron, when you get a chance to put that on the screen. Catch, tell everybody about Rogue and about those Rogue products.
Well, I think the biggest thing that I can say about Rogue Shop is that, Richard, if you're watching right now, tell me what I got to do to get a care package. Hook me up. Calgon, take me away. I need some Rogue products. Send me some carts. I will sit here and smoke on every show that I do and rep Rogue Shop. I love what they have. I love that people in the chat know that the birthday cake is my favorite. Or wedding, anything with cake. I'm still like a 7-year-old kid. If you put cake on the product, I'm going to get in it. So whether it's birthday cake, wedding cake, chocolate cake, I don't care. I love Rogue Shop. I talk a lot about the cartridges because they're my favorite, but my mom and other elderly people in my family have used the salve for their aches and pains on their joints, and it works. And like, it's interesting when people who've been kind of anti rogue-ish products their entire life because they were programmed to think that anything that could come out of the ground that people would smoke is bad. But when they use that salve and they get a good night's sleep and they wake up feeling better than they did when they went to bed, all they want is more at that point. And suddenly it's like, oh, I don't know. I don't want to do it. What if I get? Suddenly they're like, Jeff, can I get some more of that rub that I put on my bones? And it's like, absolutely. So there's so many reasons why the product is great. So many things that it can address: anxiety, all of the things it's weird. Almost everything, it seems like, stress, all those things, aches and pains, all the bad stuff. Rogue can make that better. And if you could make all those things better, Anwar, this is where you and I come in, right? Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? Your life got better the moment you started using Rogue.
Yeah, you know what, Catch? There was a thing that I learned, not ashamed to say that if there's one point I've gone to counseling, right? And the thing that I learned in counseling was that, life is about your 1 to 10 scale, right? And so, that's like your anger, your anxiety, things to that effect. If you're rolling around at a 7, like that's where you at. It don't take long to get to a 10.
For real.
Like, that's how road rage happens, right? Like it's because someone's rolling around at a 7 and then you cut them off or something by accident, and all of a sudden they're flipping you off, they're wanting to pull you over the side of the road, so on and so forth. That's how that thing happens. That's how the anxiety goes when you're rolling around in that. If you start your day at like a 1 or 2, it's so much harder to jump to the 10. And so for me, the Rogue products has been that thing that gets me to get a good night of sleep, which it means a lot. It really does. It's not, it's not Cheech and Chong where you just like, trying to have a party, but get a good night of sleep and then wake up and you're at a 1, then all of a sudden you feel good. Like your whole day is so much better. And that's what Rogue has done.
And the cool thing about what Richard and his group do, they're like at their own farm. Like they grow and make their own products. It's amazing. It's amazing. I want to actually be adopted and live with Richard.
Yes.
Work on the farm. Teach me how to be.
Yeah. So anyway, make sure you hit rogueshop.com. And Cotton, we're going on that note, Cotton. That cake has gotten me into a whole lot of trouble, but that's a different show for a different day. That's a Catch knows all about that. He knows all about a lot of my stories behind the scenes. So, all right, Catch, let me get out of here. I've got to get to this, to Sark and the stuff, but he will have House Divided starting at 12 o'clock. Him and Chad Hastings, they will do their thing from 12 to 3, have a little bit of reaction to Sark, talk about the season that's upcoming for not only Texas A&M, but obviously your Texas Longhorns. 3:30, we've got Football with Friends. Alex Dunlap will be doing his thing from 3:30 to 5:30. Then we have the Outsiders that they start their show this, coming on multiple times a week. We're going to have them. And of course, rounding back around, Catch has got some more things that are going that are hidden here. This thing is just getting started here on OB Live. Trust me, the show and the station and the programming that you see today is going to be so much different 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. What happens when we tell you we got shows on from 2 to 4 a.m. for those of you guys that are overseas? You never know. Those things may be happening. So stay tuned for OB Live. From my main man, Jeff Ketch, Aaron, who's doing the producing behind the scenes. Remember, Ketch is coming on in just a couple of hours. So do not go anywhere. I will be back tomorrow. Remember what I say, live each day like it's real last. One day it will be. Talk to you guys soon. Take care.